Do you ever ponder why certain nations virtually bar entry when Americans attempt to visit? Why does your blue passport no longer seem to grant access to every border as it once did? This situation isn't arbitrary. It transcends mere politics. And rest assured, it isn't invariably linked to security concerns. A number of countries have established firm boundaries, and policies enacted during the Trump administration certainly contributed to this stance. From travel prohibitions that ignited worldwide indignation to fractured alliances and escalating geopolitical friction, the repercussions continue to resonate today. The world has seen a multitude of significant events unfold recently, and we're here to delve into them. Stay tuned, as we'll provide a comprehensive analysis and conclusions towards the end of this video. So, if you harbor the notion that you can effortlessly reserve a flight to any destination, it might be time for a reassessment. Because for these 10 specific nations, entry for American citizens has been rendered extraordinarily difficult, almost impossible in some cases, and we're about to explore the reasons why. Consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the like button. Your support is crucial for our growth and helps us bring you more content like this. We'd also love to hear from you. Drop a comment below, letting us know where you're tuning in from. Let's begin with North Korea. Imagine a realm where the concept of time itself operates under a unique standard, dictated by governmental decree. This is a territory so stringently controlled, so locked down, that your personal electronic devices, your attire, even the very thoughts you harbor could be scrutinized upon arrival. This scenario isn't pulled from the pages of science fiction. It's the reality within North Korea. And if you hold an American passport, entry is fundamentally denied. Since the year 2017, the United States government has prohibited its citizens from traveling to North Korea. This ban followed the heartbreaking death of Otto Warmbier, an American student who was detained during an organized tour and subsequently passed away after his return to the U.S. in a comatose state. The U.S. State Department persistently issues warnings regarding the substantial danger of arrest and extended periods of detention for any American venturing into the country. And guess what? This inherent risk has not diminished over time. American citizens cannot simply decide to pack their luggage and take a leisurely walk through the streets of Pyongyang. Even requests for humanitarian visits necessitate special, explicit permission, and securing such approval is exceptionally rare, with almost all applications being denied. However, here's a fact that might truly unsettle you. While Americans face a near-total ban, tourists hailing from certain other nations are permitted entry, albeit under conditions of intense surveillance and strict monitoring. Americans? There is virtually no possibility. North Korea stands as one of the exceedingly few locations globally where your nationality alone acts as an insurmountable barrier, effectively slamming the door shut. The reasons are complex, rooted in decades of political tension, nuclear ambitions, and severe human rights concerns. You might be genuinely surprised by the other nations featured on this list. Keep watching until the end for our full analysis and conclusions. Now, let's turn our attention to Iran. Have you ever attempted to arrange international travel, only to discover that your very nationality is the sole basis for your visa application being rejected? Welcome to the Islamic Republic of Iran, a country where American citizens encounter more significant obstacles to entry than individuals from almost any other nation on the planet. The relationship between Tehran and Washington has been fraught with tension and characterized by rockiness for several decades. However, during the Trump presidency, these strained relations reached a critical boiling point. The travel ban implemented in 2017 specifically included Iran, among the handful of nations subject to severe entry restrictions for their citizens traveling to the United States, which Iran reciprocated to some extent. Geopolitical tensions further escalated dramatically following the withdrawal of the United States from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, commonly known as the Iran nuclear deal. What is the practical outcome of this complex situation? American citizens continue to be effectively barred from entering Iran for general tourism. Even specialized travelers, such as journalists and academic researchers, face significant hurdles and often struggle to obtain the necessary approvals for their visits. As for standard tourist visas, They are essentially off the table for Americans. And here's an additional point to consider, a real kicker. Even if an American were to somehow gain entry, departure might not be guaranteed. There have been cases where U.S. citizens, particularly those with dual nationality, who managed to enter Iran found themselves at serious risk of arrest and detention. Consequently, the U.S. State Department issues unequivocal warnings, advising its citizens in the strongest terms: do not travel to Iran. Reflect on that for a moment. Iran is a nation endowed with a profoundly rich ancient history, showcasing breathtaking architectural marvels and fostering a remarkably vibrant and diverse culture. Yet, if you possess American citizenship, accessing this fascinating country might feel as improbable as traveling to a different celestial body. Before we proceed further into our list, please take a brief moment to support our channel by subscribing. Doing so enables us to continue producing and sharing these insightful, eye-opening reports and truths with you. Every single click genuinely assists us in staying informed, keeping you engaged, and diligently uncovering crucial facts and perspectives that you are unlikely to encounter through mainstream media outlets. Are you intrigued by the prospect of visiting a country where foreign embassies have largely evacuated due to instability, and where powerful armed factions exercise control over entire urban centers? Here's the stark reality, the kicker. Undertaking such a journey is virtually impossible if you are an American citizen. Stay with us, because the circumstances unfolding in the next nation on our list are truly staggering and will likely leave you utterly speechless. Let's discuss Libya. Do you believe you're prepared for an authentic travel adventure off the beaten path? Consider this scenario. What if the airport you arrive at is functioning at a minimal capacity, perhaps barely operational at all, and the city itself is fragmented, divided among various armed groups, none of whom recognize the authority of the others? This is precisely the challenging reality an American traveler would likely confront in Libya. That is, if they could even secure entry in the first place. Americans are, for all practical purposes, essentially shut out from traveling to Libya. The United States Embassy, located in Tripoli, ceased its operations back in the year 2014, amidst escalating violence and instability, and it has remained closed ever since. What prompted this prolonged closure? The reason lies in the profound fragmentation of the entire nation. Libya currently struggles with the existence of rival governments vying for control, numerous militias asserting dominance over major cities and territories, and a pervasive atmosphere marked by frequent explosions and alarming kidnapping incidents. These events occasionally capture international headlines, particularly when courageous reporters manage to cover them despite the inherent risks. But consider this. Despite the evident dangers, some individuals, including contractors, dedicated aid workers, and intrepid journalists, still attempt to travel to or operate within Libya. And every single one of these individuals is explicitly warned by governmental advisories. You are proceeding entirely at your own risk, effectively on your own. The United States government maintains no military presence, boots on the ground, within Libya to provide assistance or protection to its citizens. There are no established evacuation plans in place for emergencies, and crucially, there are no embassy or consular doors for Americans to knock on should they find themselves in distress. If circumstances take a turn for the worse, if things go south, there is no external rescue force, no cavalry, coming to aid stranded Americans. Perhaps some statistics will underscore the severity. According to official assessments by the U.S. Department of State, Libya holds the highest possible travel advisory rating, level 4, which translates to "do not travel." This designation is assigned for compelling reasons. Foreign nationals, and American citizens in particular, have unfortunately been specific targets of violence, including acts of wrongful and arbitrary detention. There have been documented instances where individuals were held captive for extended periods, spanning weeks or even months, often without any formal charges, justifiable cause, or means of communication with the outside world. Furthermore, even if your intention is purely tourism, the concept of a genuinely safe tour in contemporary Libya is largely illusory. There are no officially regulated travel agencies operating under predictable safety standards. Reliable tourist accommodations are scarce and often insecure, and there exists absolutely no guarantee that the very road you might be traveling on will not abruptly transform into an active conflict zone. The situation becomes even more complex, almost perversely so. Possessing an American passport does not confer any special privilege or power in this environment. In fact, within many regions of Libya, merely carrying a U.S. passport could inadvertently make you a target for hostile elements. Forget about obtaining a visa upon arrival. Such conveniences do not exist. There isn't a straightforward, simple process for entry. You would require specific, pre-arranged approval from various Libyan authorities, entities that frequently do not recognize each other's legitimacy or jurisdiction. That is the crux of the matter. An action deemed approved by one faction could easily be considered illegal by another. Libya isn't merely a destination that's off the beaten path. It represents a comprehensive no-go zone for citizens of the United States. And if you harbor any lingering doubts, perhaps thinking this is simply exaggerated fear-mongering, consider the stance of international organizations that have ceased sending personnel into the country, or heed the reluctance of airline pilots who refuse to fly into certain Libyan airports due to the volatile nature of control, which can shift on a weekly basis. This isn't solely about predictable danger, it's about profound unpredictability. And it is this pervasive instability that solidifies Libya's position as one of the most inaccessible locations for American travelers across the entire globe. Consider a place where entire cities have been tragically reduced to fields of rubble, where the haunting sounds of airstrikes continue to pierce the nocturnal silence, and where international borders are monitored not only by uniformed soldiers, but also by an overwhelming cloud of suspicion and scrutiny. This is the harsh reality of Syria, and if you hold American citizenship, gaining entry into this nation is an endeavor fraught with near insurmountable obstacles. Let's state this unequivocally. For numerous years, Syria has consistently been designated under the Level 4, Do Not Travel Advisory issued by the U.S. State Department. The rationale is stark and unambiguous. Syria remains an active and perilous war zone. While the intense conflict might no longer dominate daily international news headlines as it once did, the inherent risks and dangers associated with traveling there have certainly not dissipated. In reality, certain regions within Syria may have become even more hazardous in recent times, primarily due to the emergence of power vacuums left by shifting front lines and the ongoing complexities of intertwined regional conflicts. But here's a crucial point to grasp. The barriers preventing American travel are not solely rooted in the pervasive violence. They are also firmly entrenched in governmental policy. The United States Embassy in Damascus was officially closed and evacuated back in the year 2012, and diplomatic operations have not resumed since. This absence means there is absolutely no consular support available on the ground for American citizens, essentially leaving them with no official entity to contact for assistance if they encounter difficulties. Compounding this, and tragically so, there have been documented instances of American citizens being detained, disappearing under mysterious circumstances, and even losing their lives within the region. Alarmingly, there exists no consistently reliable mechanism for tracking their whereabouts or facilitating their recovery in such dire situations. Furthermore, here's a piece of information that might surprise you. American citizens are not permitted to take direct flights into Syria. There are no commercial airlines operating routes from the United States to Syria, nor are there any established connecting partner airline routes that facilitate such travel. Consequently, any attempt to enter would necessitate clandestine means, perhaps attempting to sneak across the border from neighboring countries like Lebanon or Turkey. Even pursuing this perilous option carries significant risks, including the high probability of being denied entry, or, far worse, being detained indefinitely at the border crossing. If you still perceive these warnings as mere exaggerated media panic, consider the fact that the Syrian government has been known to detain U.S. citizens, potentially viewing them as political pawns. Some individuals have vanished without a trace, becoming tragic statistics in a complex geopolitical landscape. Numerous human rights organizations have repeatedly sounded alarms regarding the grave dangers, yet the perilous situation persists. Even professionals undertaking essential work, such as journalists and aid workers, are subjected to extreme levels of scrutiny and face inherent risks. Your online presence, your digital footprint, could potentially be sufficient grounds to flag you for unwanted attention. If you have ever posted anything online perceived as critical of the Syrian regime or of U.S. foreign policy concerning the region, you might already be considered a heightened risk. Beyond the political and security dangers, the country's basic infrastructure lies largely in ruins. Hospitals, roads, and essential services are severely compromised. Many facilities have been destroyed by bombing, while others remain under the control of various militant factions. Relying on GPS navigation is also ill-advised, as vast areas of the country are effectively off-grid, lacking reliable mapping or connectivity. What further exacerbates the precariousness is the deceptive sense of calm that might prevail in certain controlled zones. The absence of active gunfire in a particular city does not equate to safety. Arbitrary arrests can occur for seemingly minor infractions, such as carrying the incorrect documentation, taking an inopportune photograph, or simply being perceived as being in the wrong location at the wrong moment. It might be shocking to learn how many individuals, despite these overwhelming risks, still attempt to travel to Syria, often driven by compelling personal reasons. However, for American citizens, Syria represents an absolute and unavoidable hard stop. The potential risks profoundly outweigh any conceivable reason for undertaking such a journey, a reality that holds true in virtually every conceivable circumstance. There exists a nation where United States citizens are explicitly advised to depart immediately, without any delay, and with absolutely no exceptions considered. In this country, civil war, unpredictable drone strikes, and the constant threat of kidnappings are not mere possibilities. They constitute the grim, everyday reality, the rule rather than the exception. We will reveal this nation's identity momentarily, but before we continue with our list, please take a moment now to subscribe to our channel if you find this information valuable and haven't done so already. Your subscription is vital. It's the mechanism through which we can continue to research and present these often overlooked, sometimes wild truths that frequently remain unaddressed by mainstream news outlets. And believe us, the subsequent countries featured on this list present situations that are arguably even more profoundly shocking. Now, let's examine Yemen. Imagine a scenario where the U.S. State Department doesn't merely issue a cautionary warning against travel, but instead delivers an urgent directive for its citizens to leave the country without delay. This isn't a hypothetical exercise or a drill. It is the current, real situation, unfolding right now in Yemen. This advisory transcends the scope of a typical travel warning. It signifies a state of utter, full-blown chaos. American citizens are strictly prohibited from traveling to Yemen, and this ban is underpinned by exceptionally valid reasons. A devastating civil war has tragically torn the country asunder since the year 2014, and each passing day introduces fresh layers of danger and instability. The threats are multifaceted and pervasive. Airstrikes continue to occur. The risk of kidnapping is alarmingly high. Drone activity adds another dimension of peril, and violent armed clashes can erupt suddenly and without any prior warning. Adding to the precariousness, consider this stark fact. There is currently no operational United States embassy within Yemen. The embassy ceased its functions several years ago due to the escalating conflict and has not reopened its doors. Consequently, if you are an American citizen and, against all odds, find yourself within Yemeni territory, you are effectively and completely alone. There is no readily available official help coming your way, no designated safe zone established for evacuation, and no consular hotline to call for emergency assistance. Yemen holds the highest possible travel advisory classification from the U.S. government, Level 4, unequivocally stating do not travel. And this classification, it must be emphasized, is a significant understatement of the actual risks involved. The official warnings comprehensively detail the dangers, ranging from the pervasive threat of terrorism and severe health risks due to collapsed infrastructure, to the very real possibility of arbitrary detention by various armed factions. Even established humanitarian organizations, which previously maintained operations in Yemen to provide critical aid, are increasingly withdrawing their personnel. Why this withdrawal? It's a direct consequence of the situation being profoundly unstable and dangerous. Yet, here lies a potentially shocking detail. Despite the overwhelming risks, some American citizens still attempt to travel to Yemen. Their motivations often stem from deeply personal reasons, such as reuniting with family members or participating in essential aid work. Tragically, these individuals often find themselves ensnared in a nightmarish predicament. The Houthi movement, which exerts control over substantial portions of the country, has a documented history of detaining foreign nationals, sometimes using them as leverage or bargaining chips in political negotiations, or worse. Disturbingly, many such incidents involving detained foreigners never even surface in international news reports. If contemplating air travel into Yemen, reconsider immediately. Commercial flight options are practically non-existent. Numerous airports have suffered extensive damage or destruction, are subject to blockades, or have fallen under the control of various militias. Furthermore, even if safe landing were somehow possible, the question remains: what happens next? Reliable transportation options like taxis are scarce, security is virtually absent, and navigating the numerous checkpoints scattered throughout the country safely is an immensely challenging, if not impossible, task. Require medical assistance? Hospitals are largely overwhelmed by the conflict's casualties or have themselves been bombed out of operation. Access to clean drinking water? It is exceptionally scarce. Basic essential services? They are in a state of near total collapse across much of the nation. And attempting to use credit cards for transactions is futile. They hold no value in this environment. Every aspect of Yemen signals extreme danger for any outsider, but especially for American citizens. It is not merely a question of unfortunate timing or bad luck. It's fundamentally a matter of potentially not being able to leave once you've entered. This grim reality solidifies Yemen's status as one of the most severely restricted and perilous places on Earth for citizens of the United States. Let's consider Somalia. Do you perceive pirates as figures confined solely to fictional narratives and Hollywood movies? It might be time to reconsider that notion. There exists a real location on our planet where modern-day pirates continue to hijack maritime vessels, where powerful warlords effectively govern entire neighborhoods, and where entrenched terrorist organizations maintain control over significant swathes of territory. That challenging location is Somalia. For citizens of the United States, gaining entry into Somalia is an undertaking that borders on the impossible. The U.S. government does not currently operate an embassy within the country. Furthermore, the last instance when a U.S. embassy was functional there culminated in its dramatic evacuation via a full-scale military rescue operation during the early 1990s. Since that tumultuous period, the underlying situation has not fundamentally improved. If anything, the inherent dangers have arguably intensified. Somalia is firmly placed under the Level 4, Do Not Travel Advisory, the highest warning level issued by the U.S. government, and this designation is profoundly justified. Al-Shabaab, a notoriously violent extremist group affiliated with Al-Qaeda, operates with considerable freedom across extensive areas of the region. This group has a documented history of launching attacks targeting hotels, government facilities, and tragically, even civilian populations. It would likely shock many to realize the frequency with which such attacks occur, many of which never receive coverage in international news headlines. However, the threats extend beyond terrorism alone. General crime is rampant throughout the country. Kidnappings, unfortunately, are a common occurrence. Moreover, foreign nationals, particularly Americans, are often perceived as high-value targets by criminal elements and extremist groups alike. The grim reality is that if you are not abducted and held for ransom, there's a chilling possibility you might simply disappear without a trace. Consider this additional sobering fact. Somalia's national infrastructure is in a state of virtual non-existence. There is no stable, reliable power grid supplying electricity consistently. Dependable cellular phone service is largely unavailable across vast areas. And critically, in many regions, the fundamental concept of the rule of law is entirely absent. Should something unfortunate happen, if you find yourself in trouble, contacting the police is not a viable option, simply because a functioning, nationwide police force is lacking. Attempting to travel between cities? That is strongly advised against, and often impossible. Roads are frequently under the control of various armed groups, and unpredictable checkpoints can materialize seemingly overnight without warning. Even the simple act of crossing a town can swiftly escalate into a perilous life-or-death gamble. The capital city, Mogadishu, while often considered relatively more stable compared to other regions, remains intrinsically riddled with danger. Evidence of past and ongoing conflict is palpable. Bullet holes scar the facades of buildings, armored military vehicles are a common sight navigating the streets, and entire neighborhoods can transition from a state perceived as safe to actively hostile within mere hours. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect is this: possessing an American passport offers no guarantee of special treatment or enhanced security. Paradoxically, it might actually attract the wrong kind of attention, making you a more conspicuous target. There exist credible reports documenting instances of American citizens being followed, interrogated, or suffering worse fates, simply for being present in an unfavorable location at an inopportune time. Somalia is not merely a destination that lies off the beaten path. It exists entirely outside the parameters of any recognized map of safe travel. For citizens of the United States, Somalia stands as one of the most unequivocally forbidden and dangerous countries on the entire planet. Now, let's talk about Venezuela. Can you conceive of waking up one morning to the news that your personal savings have depreciated by an astounding 99% of their value literally overnight? Imagine your hard-earned paycheck being insufficient to purchase even a single basic meal. Picture living in a state where you cannot place trust in the government, where electrical power outages lasting hours or even days are commonplace, leaving you stranded in a nation where fundamental necessities, sustenance like food, access to clean water, and essential healthcare services, are alarmingly scarce. Does this paint a picture resembling a nightmare scenario? Regrettably, this constitutes the challenging daily reality for many within Venezuela. Let's be direct and face the facts. Venezuela is currently experiencing a state of profound economic and social freefall. It would likely shock observers to trace the rapid decline of this nation, once among the world's wealthiest oil producers, into its current status as one of the most dangerous and economically unstable countries globally. Consider the issue of inflation. It has reached historically unprecedented levels, rendering the local currency, the bolivar, practically worthless for everyday transactions. Acquiring a simple package of basic household supplies now costs significantly more than an average citizen's entire monthly wage. And here's the truly difficult part: the kicker. Essential items, particularly basic foodstuffs and vital medicines, are chronically in short supply throughout the country. Furthermore, even when these scarce goods do become available, their prices are often inflated to such exorbitant levels that the typical Venezuelan citizen simply cannot afford to purchase them. But ponder this additional layer of complexity. Despite the fact that governmental mismanagement is widely cited as a primary cause for leaving the country teetering on the brink of collapse, the situation continues to deteriorate. Public safety is a major concern. The streets are perilous, with crime rates having soared dramatically across the nation. Incidents of kidnapping, robbery, and violent assault occur with alarming frequency. Consequently, local residents live under a constant shadow of fear each and every day. For any outsider visiting the country, one can only begin to imagine how much more acute these dangers might feel. Recognizing these risks, the United States Embassy has issued repeated strong warnings advising its citizens to avoid travel to Venezuela under all circumstances. And the challenges don't end there. Political unrest remains a pervasive and volatile element of Venezuelan society. Significant portions of the citizenry are understandably frustrated, increasingly desperate, and engaged in a daily struggle merely to survive within a country perceived to be losing governmental control. Would anyone feel secure being inadvertently caught in a place where every man, woman, and child seems locked in a fight simply to navigate through another day? The difficulties extend beyond mere purchasing power. There is a lack of consistent, reliable infrastructure. Transportation systems are often unreliable, and critically, in certain areas, effective law enforcement is virtually non-existent. The government's hold on power appears tenuous, shaky at best. For any United States citizen considering travel to Venezuela, It represents an enormous, undeniable risk. Tragically, some who have ventured there have found themselves trapped, unable to leave due to the complex circumstances. Venezuela's trajectory has sadly shifted from being a nation brimming with potential to one that even its own citizens are desperately attempting to flee. Therefore, if you are an American contemplating a visit, it is imperative to think not just twice, but perhaps many times over. You wouldn't merely be facing danger. You would risk becoming entangled in the complex wreckage of a nation seemingly poised on the precipice. Let's discuss Cuba. Many envision Cuba as a quintessential tropical paradise, don't they? Images of sun-drenched kissed beaches, the aroma of hand-rolled cigars, and the smooth taste of local rum often come to mind. It certainly sounds idyllic, doesn't it? However, let's delve into the underlying truth. Cuba is a nation characterized by profound extremes. While undeniably beautiful, it also exists in a state often described as being stuck in a time warp, and the reality of daily life for the average Cuban citizen is considerably far from easy. Here's something important to understand. The Cuban government exercises extensive control over nearly every facet of life on the island. This control extends from the availability and distribution of food that people eat, to the interactions and associations people are permitted to have. Essentially, very little occurs without the implicit or explicit approval of the ruling regime. Cuba is not an environment where personal freedom flourishes openly. Rather, it's a place where government censorship is prevalent, and significant restrictions impact various aspects of citizens' lives. You might be genuinely shocked to discover how challenging it can be simply to find a functioning telephone that operates independently of government-controlled networks. For American citizens contemplating travel to Cuba, it's crucial to understand that it's not the uncomplicated, fun, carefree vacation experience sometimes portrayed. While tourism is technically permitted, the United States government continues to enforce specific travel restrictions and regulations for its citizens wishing to visit the island. If travelers are not meticulous and careful in adhering to these rules, they could inadvertently find themselves violating U.S. law without even being aware of it. Furthermore, although relations between Cuba and the United States have experienced periods of détente and relaxation in recent years, the underlying political tension has never fully dissipated, and it's vital not to forget. Cuba has a long-standing reputation for engaging in surveillance activities targeting foreign visitors. There have been persistent rumors and reports concerning surveillance operations specifically aimed at monitoring United States citizens while they are on the island. But what might be even more surprising, Cuba's infrastructure is largely in a state of disrepair and requires significant modernization. If your travel expectations include luxurious resorts and internationally acclaimed five-star restaurants, it would be wise to adjust those expectations considerably. Accessing basic amenities that are often taken for granted elsewhere, such as consistently running water, uninterrupted electricity supply, and reliable, stable Wi-Fi connectivity, can be exceptionally rare in many parts of Cuba. Therefore, anticipate potential difficulties in staying connected, whether attempting to book onward travel arrangements like flights out of the country, or simply trying to maintain contact with family and friends back home. What about the Cuban people themselves? They are widely recognized for their resilience and spirit, yet they navigate their lives within a system that presents significant constraints. They live under constant government oversight, contend with limited and often censored access to the internet, and experience severe restrictions on their personal rights and freedoms. It's a reality where even seemingly innocuous, private conversations could potentially be intercepted and scrutinized by state authorities. So, if you are an American entertaining the idea that you can simply visit Cuba, relax, and blend in unnoticed, it's prudent to think again. The Cuban government does not overlook your nationality, and it possesses both the means and, historically, the inclination to keep close tabs on foreign visitors, particularly Americans. Would you still feel comfortable embarking on a trip to Cuba, fully aware that becoming entangled within this highly controlled system could potentially place you in a position of vulnerability or danger? Cuba is definitively not the straightforward tourist paradise it is occasionally made out to be. Let's consider Nigeria. Picture yourself living within a nation where the specter of violence and pervasive danger seems to lurk around almost every corner. This is the challenging reality in Nigeria, a country grappling with the presence of active terrorist groups, frequent kidnapping incidents, and significant problems related to gang violence. It might be quite shocking to learn that a population exceeding 200 million people constantly contends with this atmosphere of fear. Certain regions, such as the Northeast, are particularly affected, experiencing ongoing bombings and attacks attributed to extremist groups like Boko Haram. Beyond the immediate security threats, Nigeria's national infrastructure remains severely underdeveloped. This underdevelopment translates into unreliability for basic essential services, including healthcare provision and transportation networks. And consider this stark reality. Despite Nigeria possessing substantial oil wealth, systemic corruption remains rampant throughout the country. This pervasive corruption exacerbates the difficulties of daily life, making it a constant struggle for the majority of Nigerian citizens. For any American contemplating travel to Nigeria, it represents an undeniable and absolute risk. Visitors must contend not only with the potential danger posed by violence, but also with significant health concerns, notably the risks of contracting malaria and yellow fever, both of which are prevalent in the region. Nigeria is certainly not a destination where one can afford to be caught unprepared or complacent regarding safety and health precautions. Given these multifaceted challenges, would you personally choose to undertake the risk of traveling there? Finally, let's discuss Myanmar, also known historically as Burma. Envision a country operating under the control of a military dictatorship that exerts influence over every single aspect of daily life. Imagine a place where peaceful protests are met with brutal suppression, and where the ever-present fear of arbitrary arrest hangs heavy in the air. This describes the current situation in Myanmar, a nation still grappling with the profound aftermath of a military coup d'état that occurred in 2021. It might be deeply shocking to comprehend that thousands of individuals have tragically been killed or detained by the military authorities in the relatively short span of just a couple of years following the coup. In Myanmar, what began as peaceful demonstrations against the military takeover quickly escalated into violent confrontations between protesters and the armed forces. Consequently, the country remains mired in a protracted state of civil unrest and instability. Furthermore, it is crucial to acknowledge that human rights violations are reported to be widespread and rampant. The country's military leadership has faced accusations of committing numerous atrocities, particularly directed against vulnerable ethnic minority groups, such as the Rohingya people. Importantly, foreign nationals visiting the country are not necessarily immune from government scrutiny or potential risks. Traveling to Myanmar under the current circumstances constitutes a significant and dangerous gamble, especially given the persistently high levels of political tension. Would anyone willingly risk the possibility of being inadvertently caught up in the midst of a brutal military crackdown while visiting? These 10 countries starkly illustrate just how perilous international travel can become when undertaken without a comprehensive understanding of the prevailing conditions and the full story. From nations embroiled in violent internal conflicts to those governed by oppressive regimes, certain destinations unequivocally warrant avoidance at all costs for safety reasons. If you found the information presented in this video insightful and eye-opening, we strongly encourage you to subscribe to our channel, give the video a like, and share it with others who might benefit from awareness regarding these potentially dangerous travel destinations. We are committed to continuing our efforts to bring you more in-depth and often shocking content covering global affairs. Please ensure you don't miss out on our future reports and analyses. Stay tuned for what's coming next. These are the conclusions we draw from the current situations in these nations.